Joining us now is Nicholas Kristof. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and an author. He's a New York Times columnist. His latest Times column is titled "What We Get Wrong About Israel and Gaza." And in and of itself, Nick, it's amazing. But the importance of talking to you is there are valid criticisms that I see out there which say there are all sorts of people suffering all over the world. How come the world's so interested in this one and not the others? And my only answer to that is Nick Kristof and the people who read him, because you sadly have gone and chronicled most, if not all, of the people around the world who are defeated, beleaguered, punished under civil war or in humanitarian crisis.
No, Ali, I've covered a lot of international crises, and they're all dispiriting in their own way. I must say that covering this one has been just particularly dispiriting, partly because, frankly, I think it's going to get worse before it maybe gets even worse. And you just have the sense that, Israel has already been shattered, and it is determined to continue the war in Gaza. I think that's likely to continue to unfold, and the toll there is just horrifying. I've been in touch with a man in Gaza who, describes how he and his children are eating leaves now, defecating in the open. I mean, just this is degradation. This is a scholar. The degradation there, and the West Bank. The West Bank is so on edge. I really worry that there is a risk of an explosion there. And you have to wonder, if the West Bank is that on edge, then what is the situation in Jordan? And is there some risk of instability in the kingdom of Jordan?
The Kingdom of Jordan, which is populated by a majority of people who are Palestinians. I want to read from your column. You said the first myth is that in the conflict in the Middle East is that there is a right on one side and a wrong on the other, even if people disagree about which is which. Life isn't that neat. The tragedy of the Middle East is that this is a clash of right versus right. That does not excuse Hamas's massacre and savagery or Israel's leveling of entire neighborhoods in Gaza, but underlying the conflict are certain legitimate aspirations that deserve to be fulfilled. You have said something that is so important that, people have said from the beginning of this, there aren't two sides. And my response is that there are 7, if not 17 sides of this. But the two sides that we can absolutely talk about is that the Israelis deserve and aspire to live in peace and prosperity, and the Palestinians deserve and aspire to live in peace and prosperity. And in that, they have more in common than they have apart.
Absolutely. And, one of the tragedies of this is that as we become polarized, instead of upholding one's own side, people tend to demonize the other. And, in truth, each side has real rights that should be respected by the other. It's astonishing what Israel has achieved. And, it should be recognized that Israel gives its Arab citizens, not those in the West Bank, but the citizens of Israel, it gives them more rights than, almost any other Arab country gives its Arab citizens. And I think that, frankly, there is something of a double standard, and that people are more likely to pounce on Israel's abuses of human rights than they are of, Syria, Yemen, Morocco, and Western Sahara. Take your pick. Certainly China toward Xinjiang. And yet, none of that negates the fact that Palestinians also deserve freedom, dignity, a state, and they certainly don't deserve to be, have their neighborhoods bombed into smithereens and have a dad roaming the rubble trying to find leaves to scrounge to feed his children.